This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we have a fun show for you today. I am so excited to have a return guest here, a gentleman that was on our show, it's been over a year, I think now, and his name is Marty Stone, and he likes to be called Marty. He is a founder and one of the owners of Buckingham Investments. He has been a successful real estate broker and investor for over 40 years. Marty was very energetic in his youth, so besides brokering investments, he established management, development, syndication, and finance divisions within his company. At one point, he had 4 brokerage operations, managed over 1,000 units, and in the 1980s, developed over 50 apartment buildings, commercial buildings, and single-family homes. A graduate of USC with a degree in finance, Marty also co-authored 2 highly successful books on real estate investing: Secure Your Financial Future Investing in Real Estate, and another, which is one of my favorites, and I found out Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets' favorite, The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing. And he has a new book that just came out through Dover Publications called Real Estate Investing for Everyone, a guide to creating financial freedom. So he's kind of giving us the preview here. As we're recording this, the book hasn't come out, but when this comes out, the book will be coming out right around that same time. Marty and his wife Lori have 3 sons, Aaron, Chris, and Adam, and reside in Southern California. Well, Marty, welcome back to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Glad to be a member of the Old Dog Society.
That's it.
You said I've been in the business. You said I've been in the business over 40 years, so that definitely puts me. Unless I started at 10, I'm fit.
and you could have started at 10. It's possible. You never know.
Yeah.
We're probably pretty close in range. You're probably younger than I am, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
You
I don't know about that.
Have this real estate.
Depends on what time of the day you ask me that question.
We are just really excited to have you here. This is great, and I'm real stoked about this book because I guess it had been 20 years since you wrote your last one. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, the Unofficial Guide book came out about 20 something years ago, and then I did that second book you mentioned, and then we did a second edition of the Unofficial Guide, and then then we hit some tough real estate times, and my kids grew up, and other things kept most of my free time going, and then And then I played around with writing a couple other books, but I never quite got the energy to finish any of them. And then this opportunity came along with this publisher, which so I thought, well, there's a lot I've learned in the last 20 years that I want to kind of let people know about in a bigger scale. I mean, the principles in this book are the same principles that we use in our company, helping people invest in real estate. So I wanted to pass a lot of that information on to others that could use it. You know, people anywhere could use these ideas and concepts to help them in investing in real estate.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm real excited to hear what you have to say. One of the things I was kind of looking at is how would you say this book differs from your two previous books on real estate?
The biggest difference, the unofficial guide, again, that was 20 plus years ago. We tried to make that more of a textbook look at what real estate investing was all about, you know, and how to analyze property and appraise it and do a plan. And we put all that kind of good stuff in it, kind of the kind of things you get if you bought a textbook on it. And I tried to make it real simple, not get too crazy with all the detail. Our company had always operated that way. We had a lot of small guides that we always gave our clients to help them understand real estate and real estate investing. So we kind of put all that together in one book. And then, you know, after that came out, things popped into my mind that we didn't necessarily get in the first book, you know, more heady stuff about planning and things like that. So that went into the second book. Then they wanted a second edition of the unofficial guide. So we updated some stuff. Now in this book, you know, I've got 20 more years in the business and I've got 20 more years in life, you know, for over 40 years of, you know, I got started in this right out of college and you know, I learned a lot of things about life and a lot of things about investing and why real estate works so good. So I wanted to put those things in the books. And there's what I'd call a critical concept in not all the chapters, but most of the chapters have a critical concept that has something to do with the chapter it's in, but it kind of I try to put in simplest form I can the thing closest to what's in that chapter that is really important to understand about real estate that makes it work so well. And the other thing I did, which I'd never done before, I put my story in there because, you know, most people think they need a fortune to get started, you know, or they got to have people helping them or wealth or something. And that I don't really believe that that's absolutely necessary. And I came from very meager beginnings, so I put all that in my story. And the first section of the book is an introduction, and I put my story in there so people will see that you don't. You know, I was the oldest of 4 kids, raised by a single mom who never graduated from high school because she ran away from an orphanage when she was 15. She got tired of being abused. And my dad was always kind of in the picture, but he didn't make enough money to help out much. And so we lived most of our lives on welfare. And as a matter of fact, when I got the wild idea to move to California so I could get a college education that I could afford, it was so expensive in Minnesota, the welfare agency in Minnesota was glad to see us leave, so they sent my mom money for another year just so we'd get out of the state, probably so we'd quit collecting. That's how I started, and I put my first investment plan in this book too, and I didn't recopy it or anything. I copied the darn thing right the way I had it written down, and I didn't start with much, so I put that in there along with all the things that I've learned.
Fascinating story. And not to say that it's like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I think that there is a lot of the same kind of elements, because wasn't it your best friend, right, whose dad was a very successful real estate investor? He's also an engineer, right?
some people talk about luck in life. I tend to call what happened to me a blessing, because the first guy I met, who became a good friend, and he's still a good friend. Wednesday we're flying to Scottsdale. He lives in Alaska now, but we visit all the time. We're still good friends. His dad, we met working at Der Wiener Schnitzel restaurant and going to El Camino College, and his dad was an investor, and he worked for Jack Buckingham, who started this company. And we knew, after hearing all the stories as we went through college, that we wanted to do what his dad did when we got out of college, is get a great high-paying job like his dad had, and put our money into real estate like his dad did, so that we could retire early like he was going to do. And I think another blessing for me was when I got out of college, the economy was so horrible, I could not get a job. Fresh out of college with a bachelor's degree in finance from USC, and I went there on 2 academic scholarships, so it wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing, but the economy was so horrible. So both Bob and I, he had a degree in accounting. We both ended up going to work for Buckingham Investments. His dad went to Jack and he said, "My worthless son and his friend can't get jobs, so would you give him a job?" And that's how it started.
Okay. Oh, wow. And he didn't, Jack kind of become sort of a mentor for you, that, kind of look at him as like sort of your rich dad.
Yeah. He was definitely a mentor. He taught me an incredible amount of things in life, and not just about real estate investing, but about the idea of making a plan, deciding what you want out of life and making a plan, and analyzing information and understanding why real estate works so well and all that. It all came from Jack. Yeah. So he was definitely instrumental in learning a lot of the things I learned, especially in the first 20 years. And then after that, learning more on my own after putting all that together and being in the business. So I was definitely blessed to find what I did.
That's really awesome. Well, you refer to this book as Real Estate Investing for Everyone. Now, what does that mean?
That was the original title I wanted, but my publisher came up with that title in retrospect. I think it was probably a good idea, especially considering the fact that, if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest, it's real easy to become an investor. And but if you don't, which was my story, then it's still, I think, an incredible vehicle for creating the net worth you need for the life you want to have. And so I think that title pulls everybody in, hopefully, to read what I've written. And I was thinking about it before we hooked up this morning, and I think there's 3 points. Now, I didn't write these down in this book; these just came to me as I was mulling this over. That the first message that I think is in the book, but it's not written down this way, is that money is a tool to pay for life needs and goals. And the second point is real estate investing is a tool to earn the money to pay for your life needs and goals. And finally, the last thing is education and planning are the keys, so you're working towards the correct goals. And that's kind of I guess I'd call it the overall message of what we've always preached as a company to our clients, and those are the things in the book where we try to teach people about real estate. We try to teach them about investing. We try to spend a lot of time talking about planning, and I think the most important thing, and I'm not sure people do enough of this, is put a plan together where they start off by sitting down in a quiet room somewhere with no distractions and try to think about what it is in life, that not what they need, but what they would really like to have that would really give them peace and serenity and joy in life. And I don't think people do enough of that. And that's really kind of important because, so many people, I think, chase dreams that maybe they've been given by other people, or maybe they're following the pack. I've got to have a 3,000 square foot house with a pool, and I've got to drive a BMW, and I have to join this country club or that country club, and I think and so they take off trying to get those kind of things in life, never thinking that, hey, maybe if I really, Michael Jackson had a song about talking to the man in the mirror, and I don't think enough people have those talks with themselves about what would really bring them a lot of joy and happiness in their life. And for some people, maybe it is all that stuff I mentioned a minute ago, and for other people, maybe it's just retire back where they grew up and get a little house and a fishing boat, and and just kick back and help out in the community and do all those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the things that really appealed to me in this book actually was in the introduction. If I can read it here, just briefly here, okay. You go, statistics show that for almost 95% of all retirees, there's no golf club membership, no exciting vacations to be had, and literally no rest for the weary. Sadly, the blessing of abundance in our country has created a generation of people who believe everything is going to work out just fine in the end. The sad truth is it is not. Many people spend a good deal of time planning the profitability of the companies they work for, yet do nothing to create the same kind of security for their own families. Often it is not until you get the boot because of the company cutbacks that they realize it is too late. Or worse yet, they do not wake up until after they get a gold watch and a round of for he's a jolly good fellow. Everyone has read about the golden parachutes that top executives get when they leave major companies. Those executives plan for those parachutes when they start their jobs. In fact, without a guarantee of one on the way out, they refuse to take the position. Now check with the Human Resources Department where you're working. Did anyone create a golden parachute to help protect you when your tenure is over? Of course not. The truth is there's probably the equivalent of a teeny umbrella set aside for you, if there's anything at all. 2 weeks of severance pay for years of service is hardly what anyone would call golden. And you will get an even smaller umbrella from Social Security. This is not very comforting after a lifetime of paying into the system. And I think, wow, that is a harsh reality for a lot of people. That even if they plan, and they set up their 401ks or their IRAs, they're not always, what they thought they would be, and I think there's that hard reality is this baby boomer bubble, especially that I'm in and you're in. I mean, they're the ones that are getting hit the hardest, and in years to come, even harder.
Yeah, that's why I put that in there, because that's really what happens. If people realize that nobody's going to take care of me, if they decide to do for themselves what most people do for their companies and put a plan together that's going to be successful, I firmly believe that it has to start with goals that are really near and dear to your heart. They're those emotional things that people don't often think about or talk about, because I think when we're kids we can think about stuff like that a lot, but as we get older and we get one disappointment after the other, we quit thinking that any of those things can come true. And I think that if we don't put those kind of goals back into what we're trying to do for ourselves, then I think just chasing a goal of like, I want to have $1 million in the bank, that that's kind of like, well, I'm making $80,000 a year in my job now, and I think I'll switch to this other company where I'll make 90. And when you go to the other company, you're not enjoying that job any more than you were for 80, and you're making a little bit more money. But in reality, money, it's just a tool to get what you want in life. And unless you figure out what you really want in life that'll really make you happy, I think that's why we have so many miserable people who make a ton of money in our world, is because they've never really figured out what they want to do with it to really make them happy. I'm kind of getting a little philosophical here, and there's not much real estate information. Real estate can create the kind of passive income that you need to fulfill those goals and dreams in life. And again, use the real estate investing as a tool to get the passive income, which is the tool that allows you to pay for what's really important in your life.
And that's one thing that I really like about your approach. And after our first interview, you were gracious enough to actually give me a little tour of your facility, or one of the multiple facilities over there that you have. And one thing that just really impressed me is that usually you go into a brokerage firm and you'll see lots of desks, filled with people, and they're all working and they're doing things. But you have areas set aside where you've got whiteboards and flip charts and the whole 9 yards. And your clients are people that you're basically educating, which I thought was really interesting, because, you could just, have them come to you. You could find them an apartment building, or you could find them a small, multi or something. And, then you sell it to them and they're gone, and that's fine. But you go another step. And what I thought was really interesting too is, there are folks that are kind of doing similar things out there, but they're charging $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, on coaching and all these things to train people. Whereas that's just a part of the way you do business. And at least if I understood you right, that you're not charging anything for the education. You're trying to help them, that purchase of that property that they get, that they understand it in the bigger, broader sense as building a portfolio and achieving those dreams that they've always wanted to have in their retirement.
Yeah. See, Jack Buckingham retired at a very young age from his real estate investments. He got tired of the rat race of the corporate world, and he had real meager things that he wanted to do in life, and he got enough money together so he could retire. What happened is, along the way, he had got his real estate license just to help with the buying and selling he did. But so people started coming to him saying, well, Jack, why don't you help me do what you did? And he said, okay, but before and Jack was really into education and data mining and all that way back before, now you pick up the sports page, all they ever talk about is analytics, how they can tell what kind of a player they need in a certain situation. Well, Jack was using analytics almost 50 years ago, studying investment property. And so he decided he wanted, if he was going to help somebody, he first had to educate them so they'd understand what he was telling them. Most real estate firms are in the listing property business, which means they do a tremendous amount of marketing to get people to list their properties for sale with them. And that requires a ton of money to do that properly. In our case, we've always worked the other side of the real estate transaction, where we've had people come to us who heard about us and became clients, and instead of spending a ton of money marketing and ads and big brochures and magazines and all that, we educate our clients for free, with the idea that if we do our job and we educate them and they really understand what real estate investing is all about, they'll want to do business with us. So I guess time is money, so it does cost us something, but we found that this is the best way to do it. So that's why we've always operated that way, by educating our clients and sharing all of our research with them. And we really believe in research, and it's through all this research that we've done for all these years that really, I think, is the foundation of what we teach people, and it's the stuff that proves why real estate works so well.
Yeah, I just love that. I love that. I think it's showing a true commitment. It's definitely beyond what most brokerages would do for their clients. I thought that was really awesome. Well, I was kind of curious too. I mean, do you have many people coming to you that are they're 50 years of age or older that are also looking to start investing for the first time?
Yeah, there's a section in the book where we talk about people that are just getting started in life, and maybe some ideas for them, and people kind of midlife or what they're doing. And if you're getting toward the end of your working years, there's still things you can do investing in real estate that'll really help you to live a more enjoyable retirement life than if you didn't do them. And I think that dictates a little different attack on what you buy and maybe the strategy. And the beauty of investing in real estate is that whereas most retirement plans that companies have people come up with, what they're predicated on is you save up a certain amount of money. Then again, that's the easy part, is figuring out how much money you might need to have the kind of life you want to need. They talk about working and scrimping and saving and putting that much money away so that when that money is invested somewhere, it will earn a little bit of return for you, but there'll be a big enough pot of money in there so you can start pulling that money out to live a decent life. Hopefully you'll have enough money in that pot that you won't run out before you move on to the next world. I think that's the scary thing for a lot of people, because people are living longer and longer and longer. And I can't think of anything worse than getting out there when you're, 75, 80, 85, and you're still living a pretty decent life. We have clients at Buckingham that are in their middle to late 80s that are still, living a great life. And if you planned on enough money to live till you're 75, boy, if you're living till you're 85, those last 10 years can be kind of grim. So, but whereas if you get money in some passive real estate investments where you don't have to do much, but they give you a cash flow. Most real estate, the cash flow goes up every year a little bit. And if you get a plan together that is creating a pretty good life for you at 45 to 50, when you're 60 and 70, it's going to be creating a really nice amount of money for you. And that's the beauty of real estate as a passive investment, because not only does it give you the money to live a decent life, but if you've got someone you want to leave something to, you're not going to eat up that whole nest egg. The whole nest egg will still be there, and if it's in real estate, it might double or triple in value when you're finally gone. So that's the beauty of it.
Do you have a case study, or if not a case study, maybe even a recommended plan for somebody that starts later, that you could kind of profile for us so that we could, kind of see how that might work?
How about if I give you my own example?
Sounds great.
I redid my investment plan. This was probably 20 years ago or more. And it was just the plan that lay out how I thought our investments would grow and what we'd refi and buy or trade up and all that. And I got to thinking, because at that point I had a few friends who died rather suddenly at a young age, and I thought to myself, gee, if something happened to me, what would my wife do? We had 3 kids, younger kids, and she's a registered nurse, and she could make plenty of money, but gee, if so I worried about that. So I came up with a plan where I said, if I could buy a building that had an owner's unit in it, if something happened to me, not the next year or two, but as we got older, if something happened to me, and I was thinking far enough downstream, so I figured our kids wouldn't still be with us, Lori could, at that point, that property would be performing really well, and she could sell our house, put all the profit as much as necessary in the bank, and then move into the apartment building, and be able to live there free, and even have an extra income besides living there free. I said that would be about as good a thing as you could have in retirement, where you could live in a really nice place for free and have a nice cash flow from that besides, and then she wouldn't have to worry about killing herself working. And so we bought the building. She promptly announced to me that she wasn't selling her house, so she wasn't really sure when we were buying this building. But in retrospect, so there must have been 30 years ago I did this. About 10 years after that, she came down with breast cancer, which is a real traumatic thing for us to go through in our lives. And she had all the surgeries and everything and came through it, and she's doing fine today. But part of what that taught us both is that life can be really short. And this is part of, again, what I was talking about earlier about what I've learned about life in general and how real estate can help with that. She was doing really well in her nursing career and was teaching for Long Beach State, and my career was really doing well. And we decided that maybe we should slow down in life and dedicate more of our time to doing the things in life that would really bring us joy, not worrying about careers and all that. So, and one of the things we did was we bought a little place in the mountains so we could get away and just kick back and enjoy life and take a walk in the woods, and came to the realization that we didn't need this big house where we raised our kids anymore. So we moved into that building, and that was one of the best things that I ever did in life. And I think that's one of the things that most people who work really hard can do. They can there's got to be a million books out there about simplifying life, and one of the biggest things that I believe people can do to make their life really easy is to find a nice apartment building in a nice area that has a unit they'd feel comfortable in, and buy that and retire there. And for most people, if they put some or all of their equity in that home into a building like that, they could probably live for free and have a whole bunch of positive cash flow to go along with it. Never have another care in the world about what the cost of living. That's probably the best idea I could give off the top for people.
It's a great idea. I mean, you think about it. Most empty nesters, come to that realization. They got this big house. They've got a large yard they got to take care of. They got to cut the lawn. Yeah. They've got to do the maintenance. All these things, and it's like, why? Why do you? And so many of the baby boomers are moving into condos and townhomes and apartments even. Yeah, just so that they don't have that headache, and they can just be free to do that. But you have the added bonus when you own it, of course, of the income and the equity. And I do have a question. Were you managing the building?
When I bought the building, we just managed it, or had a property. That's one of the things that most people are afraid of, is property management. And
right.
One of the cheapest things you can buy or spend money on in apartment ownership is the service of a good property management company.
Right. So you don't have to worry about people knocking on your door in the middle of the night saying, my toilet's clogged, and can you?
No. I've lived in this building I'm talking to you about for years, and I rarely ever get bothered. I usually get a text. This is a world of texting now. I'll get a text from a tenant that says, my drain is running a little slow, and I'll text them back. Well, I'll have the plumber come over. He'll call you first, and that's the end of it. The plumber goes over. One of the things I want to mention is that we put out from time to time a little blurb to our clients. for lack of a better thing to call it, we call it the myth of the free and clear house. What so many people do is they scrimp and save as they're getting older and do without a whole bunch of things so they can work really hard to pay the mortgage off on their house. And they think the day the mortgage is paid off, they think, oh, wow, this is wonderful. I don't have a mortgage payment anymore. But that house, which is for most people their largest single asset, it's still a negative cash flow. They still got to pay the taxes. They still got to pay the insurance. They still got to pay for all the maintenance. So they could have 2, 3, 4, 500, and out in California, they could have $800,000, $900,000, $1 million tied up in a property that costs them money to own. Whereas if they took that 2, 3, 4, 500,000 or $1 million, bought a little property that had a unit that they'd live in, they would definitely live there free, and they'd probably have a very nice cash flow. They could hire a property management company to watch that property and put it in the name of an LLC, and nobody'd ever know who the owner is, and they just live there as though they were renting an apartment. They'd never get bothered, and they'd live there free, and they could travel and do whatever they wanted and never have a care in the world. And then every year they just, the key to hiring a good property manager is that you have to be a good manager. You have to manage your manager.
Exactly.
And most people who have decent jobs manage a whole bunch of people. And those people do stuff. So you hire a management company and you manage the management company, and every year you tell them to raise everybody's rent, and every year your cash flow goes up. So that's probably the best advice I could give people who are getting a little older. And buying a condo, you're just buying yourself just another, even if you pay cash for it. You got to pay taxes, insurance, and in most cases, your homeowner's dues.
Oh yeah, that's a killer. That can be a killer
big.
too. Yes.
Oh yeah, and how about when they find out you're in a condo and it's 30, 40 years old, and they find out that something's bad, and now they've got to go in and put a special assessment in because they found out that the siding was bad, and they got to put new siding on. So your special assessment's going to be, maybe $10,000 or an extra $300 a month for a couple of years. I mean, that happens all the time. And that's not to say that you don't have to maintain an apartment building if you own it, but if you stay on top of it, all part of the game.
That's what a lot of people call house hacking, except it's a higher level. House hacking is, it's like buying a duplex, living in one unit, or a quad or something, and living in one of the units. But as an apartment building, it's a higher level of house hacking, I like it. I like the like you said, you put it in the LLC's name. People don't know you're the owner, and you can just live there and enjoy the benefits of
And it doesn't have to be 5, 10, 15, 20 units. It could be a fourplex. Could just, because depending on people's situation in life, if they don't have if they got a nice little house, they don't have enough money to buy a bigger building, because you don't want to leverage yourself too much. If you're trying to create passive income and a free place to live, that's part of you put together a plan on what it would take you to do that, and then you go out and find it, because the real estate is just the tool to put you in that spot in life where you really want to be, and it doesn't have to be big, huge apartment building.
Right.
It can be, like you said, it could be 2, 3, 4 units. I've got all 3 of my kids I started them off in life buying duplexes. They, two out of the 3, the one has a little different circumstance because of his job. He's a police officer, and he has to have a house with secure area in the back, because he's a canine officer, because he brings his dog home with him. He's with him 24/7, so he has to have a single family residence. But the other 2 both have properties where they actually both have duplexes where they actually now, because they've owned them many years, they're living for free in one of the units.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've
That's not
appreciated quite a bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a bad spot to be when you're not even 40 yet.
Yeah. God, that's great. That's great. Wow. Well, this book sounds like it's going to be fantastic, Marty. Any other things you wanted to share about it, or some points from the book that you know, that thought might be some helpful tips for you know, people that are interested in looking at real estate investing?
The number one critical concept that I put in the book was the reason that you want to invest in real estate is because it never goes out of business.
I love that.
You know, people say, well, you know, the market prices can drop and then they go up again and they can drop. And to be honest, we've charted 50 years of data in our area, and that's exactly what happens. We have regular recessions in real estate about every 10 to 12 years. And it's interesting because I bought a house from the original owner, the original builder's son, about 20 years ago. And in that house was a chart charting real estate, the history of real estate. You know, this was somewhere back east from 1850 to 1948. And the interesting thing is the real estate in that almost 100 years, it had the same up and down cycles as the 50 years that we've charted. So what people forget is, or the reason I made it a critical concept is that even though there's cycles, and if you look at the charts people put out, they'll say, well, properties dropped from, and I'll just walk over to one of my charts here. They dropped in this last cycle in our area. Apartment buildings dropped from $329 a square foot to $205. That's a pretty healthy drop. But you know, what that chart tells us is the price is going down on the people who were forced to sell for whatever reason. All the other people, now the price is high 300s now. So the people who didn't have to sell in the down period, they didn't lose a nickel. They kept earning cash flow and tax benefits, and they were paying their loan down, and everything was doing good for them. So the only people who lost money were the people who were forced to sell, but everybody else, life went on as usual. And I like to quote a study that most people know. I've heard of the S&P 500, and they celebrated their 50th anniversary in 2007, and they put out a big press release about that. And they claim to represent 75% of the largest corporations in the United States on those 500 companies. And they announced that in that press release that 86, and I'm quoting now, 86 of the original constituents survived through time, which is 17% of the original companies. So the rest of the companies went out of business. But
really, 17%, that's it.
Yeah, but the real estate doesn't go out of business. It's if you're in a bad spot for whatever reason and you had to sell, you probably lost a lot of money, but nobody else did. It's just those people that were forced to sell. So that's the number one, what in the book I call critical concept. And the number two, I'm looking for it right now. The number two critical concept that I talk about in the book is just, and the way we talk about this in our company is, and I'll read the quote we always put out: it's not the property you buy that makes you wealthy, it's buying a property that does.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Could you say it again?
So it's not the property you buy that makes you wealthy. It's buying a property that does. And what that means is, see, most people, and again, this is the reason for the educational, that most people, let's just say you went out in the marketplace today and you had enough money to buy a 4-unit. And there were 10 or 15 4 units for sale. And you went and looked at all of them, and you looked at them and you thought about it, and you go, none of these look quite good enough. I want to get a little bit better deal in this. See, they're thinking that they're not seeing the long-term value of owning real estate. They're just thinking that if I look at what's available now, and especially if they've been looking for a while, maybe the prices are creeping up a little, and they're remembering that the 4 units they looked at when they first got started looking, and all these are more expensive, and they think, I gotta wait till I find one like that one I really liked on Fifth Avenue that I missed before I buy something. And that's where they lose out, because see, what people don't understand, and I think that's our and I think in my in my book, the third chapter is called Appreciation, the Big Lie. See, people don't understand why real estate goes up in value. And some economists years ago invented the word appreciation for real estate, like it's something special for real estate. And when I get done explaining this, you'll understand it is something special for real estate. But it makes it so easy for people to think, because they see real estate going up and down in value, that it scares them away. They think, well, real estate prices change because of some special thing. So I can only buy at certain times or I'm going to get stuck. And that's far from the truth. The only, what makes real estate go up in value is the same thing. In other words, when I say go up in value, what makes real estate cost more year after year is the same thing that makes gasoline cost more, clothing, furniture, drugs, anything that we buy in life pretty much keeps going up in cost because of inflation. And what inflation is it's the loss in purchasing power of our dollar. So what happens is you have to bring more dollars to buy the same commodity. And I got years ago this handout about inflation, and there was a couple things in here which are interesting. It's like, one example is a gallon of gasoline back in the 50s and 60s cost 18 cents a gallon. And today that same gallon of gas is almost $4. Well, in this chart I got here, it says today it's $3, and that's a 1,567% inflation. Well, it's even worse than that. And they said in 1950, a scoop of ice cream was 5 cents, and today it's $2.50. Well, that's 4,900%. Well, at some of these ice cream stores now, it's more like $5. So, and all that's just the loss of purchasing power. So, what happens to real estate is, and there is in the book, I showed a couple of examples of how that works in real estate, and there is a website, and this will be in the book, but the web address is www.usinflationcalculator.com. And what you can do is you can go to that website and you can put pretty much any commodity in there. And what it does, I did an example which is too complicated to necessarily go over today, but I put in a piece of property from an old MLS book that I had from 1979 that sold for $97,000. And what this inflation calculator does is it plugs in how that price should change based on the change in the consumer price index over time. And what the calculator said is, when I printed this out was in 2013, it said that property should be selling for $274,926, based on how the value of the dollar has changed. Well, if it would have just gone from 97 to 274, whoever owned that would be happy as can be, because they made a ton of money. But in fact, the property sold for $495,000, and that's the other component of property changing in value is demand. So, in a lot of areas of the country, and that's why I think the economists invented the word appreciation, which throws people off. The other component is demand. So, in some areas with very little vacant land or growing economies, the prices can go up even faster than they would normally go up because of the decreasing purchasing power of the dollar. They go up because the demand is greater, and that's this example I gave you here. And that's why, there's areas of our country where you can still buy a nice house for under $100,000. But in California, in the city I'm living in, a fixer-upper is $1.2 million. And it's the same house as the one you can buy somewhere else for under $100. It's
Right.
The same darn house, but it's in an area where nobody wants to live anymore, unless that's the spot you want. If that's the spot you want to live, you can sell your $1 million house, pay cash, and put $900,000 in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one of the critical concepts. So, and there's a bunch in the book that I think if people kind of get the drift of what I'm trying to tell them there, they'll see why real estate works so well as a way of creating wealth, but not just for wealth's sake. I mean, the whole gist of what I'm trying to point people toward is figure out what you'd really like to have in life, and then put a plan together to get it. And when you got enough money for that thing, just get out. I've got so many clients who haven't worked for years, and they're not 65 yet. They can't even cash in the money they got in their retirement accounts because they're years from doing that, and they're just enjoying life.
That's great.
And if your listeners are wondering why am I still doing this, well, because I still love doing it. I love helping people. Trust me, I don't work that much. I still help people buy. I still work with clients, but these are people they're either people I work with for years, or they're referrals from people I work with for years, and I just enjoy it. And my wife does a lot of volunteer work. She's a retired nurse. She does especially a lot of work with women who are struggling with breast cancer. She's working with 3 different women right now who are in various stages of battling breast cancer. And when she's off doing that, I do this because I still enjoy it. But we live a pretty good life, thanks to the blessing that I came to California and met my buddy Bob and learned about how real estate could help me get the things in life that I never had growing up.
Neat. Well, you've got a great story, and it's so neat to see that both of you are, your wife, both are just returning the blessings that you've received by blessing others. Yeah. So I mean that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so in the book, just to finish, I try to cover as much of the detailed stuff that to show how to understand how investing works and why it works, and how to, I talk about calculating return and little bit about appraising value and tax benefits and finance and all that stuff and property management. But I simplified that as much as I could, so I didn't want to lose people that don't like, a lot of math stuff, because a lot of people don't like that, and people get these concepts, then that's the easy part to get help with, all that. That's the easy part.
Right.
In the good old days, we had to work all this stuff out by hand with a calculator. Now you can there's hundreds of programs you can buy to help you analyze property and do all that. So most of that stuff is real easy nowadays. And it's these concepts that I think will be the most helpful.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to, to when it does come out, getting a copy, and I am going to put a link in our website here with the show notes from today's show, so that folks can also find out how to get a hold of it when it does come out. Yeah,
I've got it. I think I sent you one. A link.
Yeah, a special one with a little bonus offer there. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, well, they can get one of our planning guides, which is just focused in on planning, and then I think there's a 20% off coupon too for ordering.
Oh, great. Wow. Well, Marty, man, I didn't mean to keep you as long as I did here. You definitely had some great information to share. I think the folks listening are going to appreciate it and take it to heart. There's also some really good tips in there and ideas that I'm sure those that are considering real estate investing as a means to be able to have the kind of quality retirement that they've always dreamed about. Well, then I think there's a way to do that. So thank you for your inspiration and for another great book. I'm looking forward to getting it.
It was a pleasure, Bill.
Hey, Marty, you know how we end our show.
Oh boy!
You got to close us out here. We're both Southern California boys here. Well, I mean, I know most of your life anyway, but
yeah, most of it.
So give us your best old SoCal hound dog howl if you're ready for that.
Okay, here we go. Oh!
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marty, for being on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Bill. It was nice chatting.
Same here. And I also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you guys can be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Please note everything we talked about today, including the links to some of these references that Marty has given, as well as this special site to get the book, along with some other bonuses and a discount, can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and look for the episode with Marty Stone. That is it. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. That's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.